you?
Well, thank you, Attorney Law. And I'm super excited to be with y'all today. And then a little bit about me. So Attorney Law shared a little bit about himself. It, you know, when we did the run through, it was really interesting because he talked about how in each city IJM had worked, he had had a baby in each city, including the pandemic baby in Manila. Well, I don't have a baby in each city like he does, but we do share the unique distinction of having pandemic babies. My youngest son, pictured there, was born in Manila in May under ECQ. So that was a really exciting experience. And I also have an older son, and I started in law enforcement. It seems like forever ago, back in 2006, and I've done everything from be a patrol officer, supervisor, to K-9 work. You see there my former K-9 partner Amy, and then the last bit of that was leading a team conducting investigations on crimes against children. So I've been doing it for a while, and I'll tell you another story about myself later on that I hope will be interesting to you. So Nelson Mandela said, and I want us to remember this for later, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. So now let's talk about what OSEC, or the online sexual exploitation of children, looks like in the Philippines, and kind of how that works in the predominant cases that we're seeing. So IJM, we recognize that OSEC, right, it can mean very broad things depending on the audience, and depending on what either prosecutorial or law enforcement or judiciary body you're talking to, you know, it can encompass quite a bit of activity regarding to child exploitation and abuse online. When Attorney Law and I are talking, though, we add this definition because IJM, we're focusing on a very specific subset of OSEC, that is the trafficking aspect. And so that's the production of this content, this sexual abuse content. And it can be photos, videos, but the predominant mass of what we're seeing in the Philippines is live streaming sexual abuse. And it's distinctly for a third party who's not in the physical presence of the victim in exchange for compensation. So that's the trafficking side of that. And that's uniquely what Attorney Law and I will be discussing. So I recognize many of you are probably parents, right? And so we're going to give you a really good taste on how you can use your voice and use your expertise to leverage for kids that are being trafficked. And you're probably wondering, right, if you're a parent, how can I keep my kids safe? Well, we're not going to have a whole lot of time to talk about that, but the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States has some really, really good content for families on keeping your kids safe. And they also have age-appropriate content for your children to learn about proper online activities as well. So what we see in this trafficking section of OSEC, right, is you have sexually motivated offenders that want the content. They're typically in Western nations such as the US, Europe, you know, Canada, Australia, the UK, and they connect with traffickers here in the Philippines who unfortunately often are family members or close associates to the child. And so they connect via public surface level platforms that you and I use every day, right? So that's the alarming thing, is that this isn't a hidden dark web crime. This is very much a surface level crime. So they connect, they figure out what's being offered. The sexually motivated offender then sends via money transfer agency. So again, a very surface level platform that's commonly used in the Philippines, sends money back to the trafficker. And then the content is exchanged. Again, that can be pre-recorded or pre-captured, but a very, very large majority of what we see is this live streaming. So it quite literally becomes pay-per-view sexual abuse of children, and it's custom ordered, which is just really kind of heartbreaking and horrendous to consider, and is also the reason that we think that OSEC, this trafficking OSEC, is one of the most damaging forms of online exploitation. So why the Philippines, right? Why does the Philippines become one of the global hotspots for this, according to UNICEF and other places, right? Well, we've identified through our collaborative casework with the Philippine government some enabling factors that we think contribute to that. So number one is that the Philippines has a really robust and easy to use money transfer agency infrastructure. And just to be clear, I'm not anti-MTA, right? This is a really important part of the Philippine economy. And in the most recent World Bank data, around 32% of Filipinos have bank accounts, which means they're very, very dependent on this as a way to send and move money, especially for OFWs overseas sending money back. So the unfortunate thing is this very narrow section of sexually motivated offenders and traffickers are utilizing that to their advantage. It's lucrative, right? And you have these disparities in economy. So what I mean by that, in the US, for example, $100 is not a ton of money, about 5,000 pesos. However, 5,000 pesos, if you did several shows a day for multiple days a week, it would only take you a few days to make the average Filipino salary. And so then you multiply that over the course of a month. And so it's cheap for people, the sexually motivated offenders that want it, and lucrative in the context of the economy for the people here. So that's what we mean by that. You have widespread, inexpensive internet access. Everybody in the Philippines, internet penetration in the Philippines is quite incredible. Most of that is via prepaid cellular service. And then the ubiquity of broadcast cable cameras. Every phone, I can't think of one that doesn't have a web camera. And then this concept of relative impunity. And so this is really tricky, and I want to explain this because the Philippine government, the Interagency Council Against Trafficking, so IACAT, the Philippine National Police, the National Bureau of Investigations, government prosecutors have done an incredible job fighting trafficking issues in the Philippines. I'll talk about that a little more later. So this isn't that the Philippine government is ignoring it. A couple things here. We need more of them, right? We need more cyber cops, so to speak, more cyber cops than cyber crooks, is the way that you'd hear that term sometimes. And then we also really need the tech and financial sector to come along with us and help us innovate new detection technologies. Because right now, traffickers and sexually motivated offenders can use these surface level platforms because they don't have to be scared of being caught for the most part. And then, of course, you have common language proficiency. So, the sexually motivated offender does not have to use a middle person or a translator because people in the Philippines speak quite good English. So this is a map from the OSEC study, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But this is IP addresses that are linked to child sexual abuse material. And then so the IP address in the Philippines, and then the connecting IP address foreign. And so the reason I add this is I think it's a really powerful illustration. It's so visually intuitive and shows us that this is a global problem, right? So we have to think globally and act locally on this issue, right? Like international collaboration is a major part of combating OSEC. So now let's talk about the OSEC study. The OSEC study was really quite ambitious. So it was a partnership between IACA and the U.S. Department of State under the Child Protection Compact with the Philippine government. And then in addition to numerous other government partners that participated, it would take me probably the rest of my presentation time to list them all. But the main like implementing partners were IACA, IJM, and the U.S. Department of State. And so we did this study on case data from 2011 to 2017. The reason we cut off at 2017 is, first off, for a study, you have to have a cutoff point somewhere. And B, we were trying to measure prevalence of OSEC towards the beginning of IJM's project on OSEC, which would have been about 2015. So what we discovered is that prevalence is really, really difficult to find and define, but we learned some other really, really interesting things. And you can actually get a full copy of the study for free there at that QR code or at that tiny URL link. Anyways, so we reviewed cases as part of this, and we discovered that all of the traffickers communicated in English. So that confirms that one enabling factor we talked about, the language proficiency. Most of the traffickers communicated and exchanged materials on the surface of the web, right? They're not hiding it. This isn't cryptocurrency. This isn't the dark web and Tors. This is quite literally being done on apps that you and I use nearly daily. And then, so we learned that financial motivation, or not so much learned, confirmed really, that financial motivation was a major factor in the crime. So we found in 83% of the cases we reviewed, there was direct tangible evidence that there was a financial exchange. And so that's statistically quite significant. And then the heartbreaking things that we learned are that you don't have one trafficker harming one child. Almost the average number of victims per case was 4, and we had 10 cases involving 10 or more victims. So a trafficker will harm and traffic multiple children. And then without any kind of intervention, the abuse lasted for years. We know that this abuse doesn't just stop. The people don't just suddenly wake up and say, okay, we've made enough money, we're doing good now. This abuse will continue without intervention. The really heartbreaking things is we found, so this is updated, this is our study data plus some through May 28th, 2020. So we found that the median age of OSEC victims was 11 years old, and that's alarming. That's much, much younger than quote unquote traditional trafficking, sex trafficking. Typically in more traditional sex trafficking, you see mid to older teens. But here we're seeing very, very young children predominantly being sold and trafficked. 45% of OSEC victims are 12 or younger. 9% were under the age of 3. And then the youngest victim that our partners have rescued as part of our collaborative casework was less than a month old. So just really kind of horrific, eye-popping statistics there. So again, I want to circle back. The Philippine government has actually been quite progressive and proactive in trying to combat trafficking in the Philippines and combat OSEC. The Philippine National Police Women and Children Protection Center, so PNPWCPC, and the National Bureau of Investigation's Anti-Human Trafficking Division, NBI-ATRAD, among others, DOJ, Office of Cybercrime. This involves prosecutors. You just, again, there's not enough of them. We need more. We need more help, but they've done an incredible job. And that was seen in 2016. The Philippines earned Tier 1 status in the U.S. Department of State Trafficking in Persons Report. They've maintained that every single year, including the most recent year. And I just want to draw our eyes to the Tier 1 placements. So that's not Tier 1 placements regionally. Those are Tier 1 placements in the entire world. So these are the countries that are doing the best job at combating trafficking. And as you can see, that's a very small and exclusive list. So yeah, we know that this works, right? And IJM, we distinctly know that this model of collaborative approach works. So our OSEC project was launched in the Q4 of 2015. And since then, you can see there that the rescues, arrests, operations, and convictions have skyrocketed. And that rescue, so this is good through Q2 of 2020. We are now above 700 children rescued. So just incredible what can be done when, you know, governments and non-government organizations internationally collaborate on this issue. The other really quite incredible initiative that we've seen was that the PMPWCPC and NBI-OTRAD are leading this really innovative and collaborative international effort called the Philippine Internet Crimes Against Children Center, affectionately called the PICAC, or if any of my Australian colleagues are tuning into this, they call it the PICAC. And this is an international collaborative approach that they're leading that involves official partnership between them and with the Australian Federal Police, the United Kingdom National Crime Agency, and International Justice Mission. And this allows this international collaborative crime fighting approach to take place. And since its founding, we've drawn a lot more interest from the international law enforcement community. And this has really become a powerful tool in combating OSEC. There's actually discussions in place now to add another international government partner to this. I won't announce anything more because that's their place and the PNP and NBI's place to announce that appropriately. But I say that just to highlight that people around the world are taking notice of the things that NBI, PNP, DOJ, OOC, that these Philippine law enforcement agencies are doing. So that's going to be the situationer for me. I'm gonna be quiet now and let you hear from a survivor of OSEC, and then I will come back later and tell you a little bit about my journey into this fight.
I'm paid for every disgusting show that I will do in front of in front of that computer, in front of the camera with the customer. And while doing that every disgusting show, I lost every bit of my self-esteem. And to the point that I felt disgusted of myself as well. Actually, the customer demands for the shows. For example, they will tell you what to do. And then if you won't like um if you won't like obey your customer, my trafficker would give you consequences, just like what I told you earlier. They will starve you, they won't give you anything, just like that. And if you refuse to talk to your customer, they take over. It's like it's like being trapped in a dark room without any rays of light at all. And there's no point of leaving at all, something like that, because you just you do disgusting shows every day, every time, and then after doing that you go to sleep, and then you repeat the same routine every day, and it's like there's no ending at all. The healing process, it wasn't easy at all. It took me years to recover from that painful experiences, from the traumatic experiences. You know, at night, when someone suddenly turns off the light, I would like suddenly get up from my bed, and you can just sleep without light because you're so afraid of dark. That's where it left me for years.
Yeah, I think that's just incredibly powerful to hear it from the voice of a survivor of this crime. And I know that that probably moves you as much as it does me every time I hear it. So thank you for your attention. I'll talk to you again soon. And back to you, Attorney Law.